What is going on, everybody? Justin Thomas here from TopShelf Fandom, and we will be doing a quick ups and downs for last night's History Vikings episode, Season 5, Episode 14, The Lost Moment. Unfortunately, the video version of this was taken down globally, so due to copyright. So after 3 very time-consuming attempts to chop it down to get it unblocked, I have accepted the fact that this will have to be audio only, but we will be looking at the episode as a whole and discussing the season so far as a whole. So please enjoy, please support, and I look forward to hearing what you guys think in the comments below. Of course, if you have not subscribed already, make sure to do so, and if you'd like to support creativity, go ahead and check out the link for my Patreon in the information below. And thank you to all those who are a part of my Patreon community and help making content that much easier. So yes, we start off at the sacrifice, the very unfortunate and I would say probably, I'm going to guess for most of the fandom, disappointing result for a poorly played cliffhanger. So we find out the sacrifice is indeed just a Lagertha lookalike, not Lagertha herself. No big surprise I didn't really get Lagertha, but some people I know were hoping for an execution of Venjenz or the Seer or somebody else of import, but I really don't mind this being more of a throwaway. Again, we'll talk about in a minute, poor execution of this act in general, but nonetheless, this does, in my opinion, I think that this will lead the story organically to where it needs to go as far as Ivar finally coming to, as far as Ivar and Venjenz hopefully coming to a real divide and giving characters motivation to do things that will progress their story on in an entertaining and organic way. That is all I'll say on that. I just wouldn't want to see one of the best actors and one of the only people that are doing a good job in this series and a person that has, regardless if we'll see it or not, a real history that's very interesting in Venjenz be killed off just for the sake of shock. So essentially this was a undesirable approach to a disappointing end, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it's best we don't lose a major character in lieu of trying to save a poorly executed plot thread, as I said. So I definitely would have preferred to see this actual sacrifice happen at the end of last episode and leave it at what's going to happen now because of the action, other than, oh my god, what is the action going to be? It's considered amongst all writers circles and just really generally just to be bad writing, taboo. It can really be a show killer in some senses. The Walking Dead found this out the hard way. You want to show people the action, and the suspense is created through, we want to know what is going to happen in our world to our characters now that this has played out. Not, oh my god, what is going to happen? It's what's going to happen because of the action. We do have it happen. It was only a week, but nonetheless, when you create a hit cliffhanger like that, you are really dependent on all the wrong things to drive viewership. This does go along with what Ivar would do in this situation, in my opinion. He is becoming delusional, and he is becoming just power hungry at any cost, pretty much just throwing all caution to the wind in every aspect of his life. Also, I think that this is definitely an example of doing mental gymnastics to make Ivar less one-dimensional, but there is the hope within the fandom that, and I like this a lot, that he is aware that this child is not his, that he's not just a fool, because remember, Ivar's supposed to be the clever one. He's never done anything clever, but we're told he's clever, which is not ideal, but this act does give some credence to the idea that the character is not just delusional or just plain out dumb and thinks that a child could be his, that in no way could be his, and he is using this because of all the advantages to people thinking he has an heir in order for him to hold on to his power. So it would be him lying to the people, not him just lying to himself, or even worse, just being plain stupid. So yeah, this shows him doing something similar. That's what I'll say. This shows him, yes, putting on a show that is not fulfilling for him, but he's willing to put on a show for the people. But again, I do think that that's just, you know, hopeful thinking. It does seem like something he would do, but what we're gonna get to here in a minute is, what would Ivar not do at this point? The character seems like he is literally capable of anything, and not in a good way. And this kind of goes for all the characters. I will say the only thing that I do like about what Ivar's doing is how he is embodying Aslog, more than Ragnar, we are seeing the spiritual side. If you remember, Ragnar obviously was pretty much agnostic, if not atheist, and yes, used the gods to his advantage, but you know, Aslog was very, very spiritual, and she was huge on these ceremonies. I mean, she was killed during one. So I mean, it does make sense, especially with how coddled he was by his mother. And then moving straight along to a story thread that has not moved straight along. I essentially think this story could have been done in 3 episodes, if even less. Iceland, Floki, one of my favorite characters, a fan favorite, and this is just essentially a huge down. I cannot stand these scenes anymore. I can't think of the rhyme or reason for what's happening here. Essentially, we have a group of the most devout pagans that Floki could find, so no surprise, you essentially started a cult on an isolated island. All of this is a lot of internal conflict that is going nowhere, about people we don't care about. We only care about Floki, and most of us are pretty fed up with Floki at this point because he brought us to this place that is just, I've never spoken with one fan that is enjoying this. And yeah, I mean, you have a lot of people that are constantly just submitting votes whether to kill Floki or not, and it essentially seems to me like this is like almost an embodiment of what's happening in the writer's room. They wrote a terrible storyline, and they're just constantly deciding on if they're going to kill off Floki or not, so it's like essentially just playing out on screen. They went to a place that had a lot of possibility, and they totally dropped the ball. I'm not gonna even go in deep on this. I just don't care. I just don't care. This is a huge down, and unless they do something drastic, it's always going to be a down. I really hope they do something with it, but in all reality, it probably will end with them just killing Floki, and I really would like to see Floki make it to the end of season 6. They are only doing 6 seasons, so essentially that'll be about 20 more episodes after we finish up 5B here. So I really would like to see him make it to the end, but I don't see them resurrecting this story thread. So I honestly wouldn't watch these scenes if I didn't have a podcast that I spoke about it on and I didn't do these videos. Only reason I watch it. I see no other reason. Now we will move on to Vicek's small but enjoyable sequence of scenes in this episode. I really do think that this actor is one of the ones that's doing well, and I do think that there's a lot to do with him. I enjoy him. He handles the physicality well, besides generally speaking a smaller guy for this show, but all of the sons of Ragnar except for Ubba and Bjorn are smaller. But yeah, I think he handles the physicality as well as the emotional quite well. They just don't give him a lot to do. But the issue is here, and this is the issue that's going to strain throughout the rest of this review, is conflict being created for the sake of creating conflict. Why is Vicek with Ivar, you know? And I totally understand the reality of people doing things that they end up regretting and they don't really know why they did them. But in a television series, you need to have set goals and desires, and they do need to be fairly clear. And it's almost meta here when this love interest of his says, "Why are you here?" And Vicek does respond with how he literally jumped ship to Ivar from Ubba and, you know, doesn't know why. I do give this an up. I do like seeing Vicek go against Ivar. I do like the fact that Ivar is not seemingly as powerful, because I do feel like he has overcome a lot of hurdles that with very little ease, when there should have been a lot more struggle in order to get to the all-powerful Viking warlord that he is. I mean, essentially, you have a handicapped character that isn't affected by his handicap. They just have him walking now, which is semi-ridiculous to me. I mean, they make it so he has no way of having a functional libido, but walking is no problem because it's inconvenient for them, most likely, to try to showcase a strong Viking warlord crawling everywhere. So they have to kind of, like, you know, pick a stance here. I don't really know what message that sends to the disabled community. It's like, I guess Ivar just really wanted to walk, so now he walks. It's just very inconsistent and unrealistic. But anyways, yeah, I do like that he's finally, you know, standing up to Ivar, and we see people are not taking to his BS, essentially. And we do get a big up where we see a prisoner spit in Ivar's face, and people are just rejecting him all out. You know, he wouldn't just rule the world because we know him from the history books. It's always disappointing in stories where they tell you somebody is important and they tell you somebody is just so great, but they never show them doing anything important or great. That's kind of what Ivar's done so far, in my opinion at least. You know, he is not clever because, again, he's never done anything clever. And how strong he is, I don't see him doing things. I see him now walking around on these knife stilts of his, but I didn't see him like in any struggle to do that. He just started doing it probably because when they were filming, it was inconvenient to show him crawling around a lot. It makes him look weak, and it's just a sad reality of what that situation would be, and it's a reality that he would have had to overcome. But there's a lot of issues with his character. He is just a shadow of what Ragnar could be, and they rushed it. But yeah, Vitchek is questioning his decisions, and I would really like to start to see some set goals for these characters. So we all know they want to be great. We all know that they want to be victorious, but in what, where, and how? So the state of limbo that we're in with everybody, there's a lot of injection of unnecessary internal conflict and external conflict, but there's very little rhyme or reason why this is happening, and characters seem to be acting out on a whim to just do anything that the story calls for, as long as it provides us with more conflict, which you always want to put your characters into a situation that's just ripe with conflict, but you want your characters' conflict to be aligned with their goals and desires. So if you don't have goals and desires that are clearly plotted out, it's kind of hard to tell why that conflict matters. And then when that conflict doesn't end up mattering, Ivar's case is handicapped, a very compelling story of strong will overcoming the odds and all that. We didn't see that story. He just started walking one day, and then he became the warlord of all these badass Vikings and got an army from seemingly nowhere. You know, that's not very compelling. So you can't just fill a bunch of episodes with unnecessary soap opera-ish, for lack of a better phrase, a conflict, and then expect it to pay off when you then ignore that conflict when the external events happen, like a battle that we're probably going to see in the next episode. But yeah, Vitchek, I think he's gonna come around to having a set desire. You know, hopefully we will be shown a clear path for all of these actors, but Vitchek in particular, he has a very interesting path that he takes in the mythology, or whatever you want to refer to it as. But in the sagas, Vitchek does do some interesting things and has a very interesting end to his story. So I'd like to see a set path, not just, oh, they want to do great things and they're sitting around and everybody's very unsure of why they're doing what they're doing. You just can't have too much of that in a fictional entertainment series. You do need to have set goals and desires, and it can't be just as broad as they want to be great. A good example of this is when Ragnar disappeared for the 10 years or whatever amount of time they allotted for that. They didn't show that. They went away to the mountains supposedly, and he dealt with all of his issues, all of these deep internal struggles. And I'm not saying internal struggles need to be in your story, but you can't have a story that is nothing but a bunch of random internal struggles that are attributed to characters that seemingly are just doing whatever the plot calls for in that episode, not the overarching plot. You know, Lagertha loves Hedvin because she needs conflict and they needed a reason to go to England and for her to want to go, right? They wanted to have a big twist with Rollo, but that meant nothing in the end, and all it did was contradict their story by having us believe he would rather help Ivar and Vitchek win because supposedly Vitchek reminds him of himself a little bit, but not his son. So, you know, they're constantly running into contradictions and conflict within their story because they are having these characters just in this state of limbo, in this state of unsurety, just really filling episodes where you really don't have time to fill episodes. And the story that we get in the sagas gives us a lot to play with here. I'd rather see the story of them conquering England and the Rus and Byzantium and so forth, not sitting around in England. If you want to justify them all sitting around, don't justify it by filling it with just conflict that is, again, mostly internal, hardest to convey, mostly just not in sync with the little bit of development that you have done so far in the prior seasons. You know, you have Uba and Torvi get baptized. Seems like a big deal, but it's really not. I don't mind that because that's something they did. A lot of them did it. They assimilated quite quickly, not out of the range of reason, but does it really matter? Bjorn, can somebody give me one clear desire goal that he has? I mean, what the hell? I mean, I guess he wants to go back to the Mediterranean, but at this point it doesn't seem, I can't tell if Bjorn trusts Magnus or if he just, I mean, it just seems like the guy just does not give a shit. He's not charismatic. His performance is just poor, just looking at it from a base level. If you're looking at this from, is he a good actor or not? He used to be, doesn't seem to be anymore. Don't know if it's writing or not, but I don't know. I guess he needed a reason to kind of be in conflict with what's going on internally. Don't really know what his big plans are, but he's around. Headman is supposed to have all this conflict between being holy and being a warrior, but, you know, it's really not a conflict for him because his actions don't show that. I mean, what does he do? Gets Lagertha over there. He has no problem still having relations with her. When he thinks he might be found out, he kills a priest in a house of God. I mean, there's no real conflict there. It's just they say there's conflict. This is used to his advantage. We now see him, we see him rise up in the court of Alfred. So there is no consequences. We are not left wondering, oh, are they actually going to fight against King Harold or not? Yeah, they're all absolutely going to do it. They all have reasons that they kind of gave for them not doing it, are doing it, but those don't factor in. They're going to do it anyways. There are no consequences for any of these actions, so that renders the conflict irrelevant, especially when the consequences of the conflict are the conflict itself, doesn't play into the actual external. Especially when you have internal conflict that does not play into your external. The only reason to have internal conflict is so it makes your external conflict harder on your characters. The journey is more of a struggle in your arc because you have internal struggle. But when these internal struggles are just essentially the story themselves and then don't play into what you really want to do to really move the plot along, it's a waste of time, pure and simple. How many times has Bjorn been married? I've lost count. How many women has he just been with? I mean, what's the reasoning for having him be with Alfred's wife? Just to take the consequences of Headman and Lagertha getting caught to a new low level, meaning having him essentially kill a priest for no reason? Because, I don't know, my way of thinking is killing a priest in a church, being a holy man like he is worse than him getting caught kissing a pagan. Further this with the relationship with Bjorn and Alfred's wife-to-be. I mean, you're just creating these situations and scenarios that are, ooh, this is, you know, creating all of this conflict, but it's really just dismissing conflict in the grand spectrum of things and taking away consequences, and then having actions of your characters not make sense. They don't add up. The actions seem unreasonable. They seem to be overblown. Everybody is doing things that isn't justified because essentially for every situation you create, there's a counter example of why that shouldn't be happening, of why it's not important. You tell us one thing's important and then show the same exact situation in the same episode to make it even worse and show it as almost a throwaway scene that doesn't mean anything, and there's no worry about it or any consequences whatsoever. Essentially, when writing a fictional series, it's a rule to attribute negative and positive values to every action a character can take. This is the way you weigh your stakes. This is how you create stakes. What's on the line for this? What matters? You don't know what matters if you keep just contradicting yourself with the values of these acts. I mean, I don't know. What is the actual negative of being caught having relations with a pagan? Seems to be something that people are willing to risk quite frequently, and not just peasants. We're talking about the Queen of England. So we're also talking about, again, the other King of England and Judith. So it's creating these conflicts and then dismissing these conflicts, and nothing matters. For example, you have the total dismissal of historical account when you have the rise of Alfred the Great. Of course, you want to just tell the story of Alfred the Great, but really the rare situation here is the history and entertainment align, because Athelred, his brother, is somebody that dies in battle, and actually the battle that is the only accounting of Headman, where the inspiration for the character comes from. So he dies in battle. That's something that cinematically works out, thematically works out, it works out on all levels. You can get straight to Alfred the Great. Let's not have Judith come off as a wicked witch, which we have now, and create a conflict of having a abdication of the throne when it makes little to no sense, just to create more brothers fighting and to create more internal conflict when he would already have enough conflict happening with the situation of the mass invasion of a Viking force at all fronts within his kingdom, which again, Wessex is what he ran. England is something he created, and it had to be unified, and he did that, and he has to overcome a lot of odds. Why do you keep his brother around, which just doesn't make sense in general? Again, the actor that plays Athelred is just not compelling whatsoever. I would say borderline terrible. Seemingly the norm for the new additions all seem to be borderline terrible, but he is especially terrible. And he is now plotting against him because what did you do? We see Alfred take his seat, we see them to be dismissive of him, but they give him the army. So it's like, hey, let's do the worst thing you could do. Let's make somebody advocate from the throne, take away their power, and then give them the power, the military. So it's just nonsensical. And then again, we see this plotting going behind closed doors and doing all this plotting, which, yeah, I mean, that probably would happen if that's how that went down. Again, that's not how that went down because it's nonsense. But we have what? Is there an outcome? No, he decides not to even do anything about it. Maybe he will later on, but oh my God, please just tell the actual story. This is a rare time that you can be the History Channel. You know, you could adhere to history and it actually works. There's plenty of struggle for Alfred, but hey, why not just create this soap opera nonsense? Because now I don't like Judith. And now we have all of this internal conflict in his court that could have just been created by the pagans being there. But again, who knows how big of a conflict that is? They baptized 2 of them real early, and his queen is sleeping with one, or has slept with one. So it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. And also, Alfred the Great, and we see the somewhat retconning of Alfred to be weak in battle, when yes, we do see him need some help from Athelwulf, his father, but he shows himself to be quite a adept warrior in the previous scenes. But they needed to show some weird, not even a great scene of Ubba just throwing some axes at a tree. I don't know what that was necessary for. I guess, you know, to show his brother as a stronger warrior. I don't know. I thought that was kind of conveyed already, but again, just kind of a waste of time. There's plenty of stuff for all these characters to be doing. They should be doing them. And the last topic that we'll touch on is the big shocker of what's happening to the seer, and how I've chosen the most dangerous avenue in his world, and that is to just basically chain up the seer and show him, a very religious person, break guidelines, rules, whatever you may call them, of his religion and abuse the seer. But again, what would Ivar not do? None of this is surprising to me. It wouldn't have been surprising to me if he killed Vitchek. It would have been disappointing. Wouldn't be surprising for me to see Ivar do anything, because Ivar is a cartoon character. These actions are, oh wow, that's, you know, not good for Ivar, but it's not, oh my God, I don't believe he's doing that. A simple analogy I'll do is, you know, Game of Thrones. I mean, props to Dan and Dave with Cersei. Cersei is definitely an evil character, but when she blows up the Sept and you see her drinking and sipping her wine and showing internal conflict after showing us some external action, we are still shocked by it because there's some nuance to it. Yes, she goes and then tortures the Septa. Still a little bit of shock because it's always like, well, Cersei is not the best person, but, you know, and she is an evil woman per se, but she is still grounded by her love for her family and just her general needing to, like, be a human being and survive. Even though, again, she does atrocious things, but it's still like a shocker. It's shocker because they had her hold on to some of her humanity, even throughout all of her terrible actions and all of her unlikable deeds. Her humanity is still there, so you empathize with her. Again, there's a big difference between sympathizing and empathizing. You need to empathize with all characters. You need to have a connection to them. You just need to understand where they're coming from. Ivar, it is whatever. He could literally kill the seer, he could slit his throat in front of everybody, kill every other son of Ragnar, and I don't know, then get baptized and become a Christian. Nothing is just a shocker for me. It's just like, oh wow, that happened. That's you know, another thing Ivar's doing. And the same goes for the rest of the characters, to be fair. I mean, I don't know what Bjorn wants or will do. Again, I don't know if it's just bad acting. Are you supposed to be conveying that he just really doesn't give a shit if Magnus is the son of Ragnar or not? Which clearly isn't, but just seems to be something he's willing to go along with, just like everything. Doesn't really have care in the world. Rollo told him he's his dad. He's just said, I don't really care. Lagertha didn't care because it didn't fit. They didn't want them to go to France, so it didn't fit. They needed the army to provide a win for Ivar. So it's just inconsistent. I just really need to see them. And I do feel that after we pass this final battle in the Civil War, and what I'm speaking about is what we've been led to believe, that we will see Bjorn go back and fight at Kattegat. But again, I'd rather see them fighting for like Ireland, England, the Rus, Byzantium, you know, not Kattegat, the trading port that in real life is like a partial land separating Jutland. I'd rather see them fighting, if they're gonna have to keep fighting with each other, fighting over territory and caring about what the big picture was in Ragnar's book, you know, what he wanted, and not just this fucking small trading post. So that's all. And I think that once we do get a battle, you know, it'll be good. I do like the injection from Olaf. He has that. It's almost treated as a throwaway line, but it's really kind of important. I see it to be important and a nice little touch, how he says that we're all the sons of Ragnar now. And, you know, that is essentially who the sons of Ragnar that we're following now are. I mean, there's no way that these are actual children of Ragnar Lothbrok, at least all of them. There's just, I'm a betting man, and I would say none of them. But, you know, it's just an embodiment of a legendary name. It's how it works. So I really like that injection, but his relationship with Harold, again, it doesn't seem, you know, he either flipped on a whim or they're playing some long game, but the long game, I don't really know how much that's going to matter. It does seem like they're fighting for territory over there, and essentially, I do think they're going to have to stick to a little bit of history with how powerful Harold is in the real sagas and history. And again, it's like, who cares if he's being honest with Harold or not at this point. Harold, essentially, I don't get why he's been trusted at all. He has only been called out by Aslog in the very first introduction to him when he says he's going to be king of all Norway, which he does, spoiler alert, in real history, which who knows if that'll be injected, does happen. But, you know, I've related this in one of the parody videos I've done before. It's like somebody knocking on your door and saying, hey, I want to own this house and enslave you in it. And then you invite him in for drinks for 7 years. He's constantly just been saying he's going to overthrow people. You know, they do treat Kattegat like it's some type of country. Again, it's a small trading port, but it's in Norway. In the show, it's definitely in Norway. So you can't be king of Norway and not be king of that. So, you know, I don't see why this hasn't been a problem before. But, you know, and his reasoning for fighting seems to be, again, he just has mixed feelings. He just doesn't have a care in the world. He's disillusioned. More caught up about Astrid dying than he is about killing his brother, which for some reason he thought Rollo would care about. Rollo asked, is there anything I needed to know in the last episode? And I found this to be very humorous, at least in my own way, that he told Rollo that he killed his brother. And it's like, Rollo, in all reality, should have been like, who the fuck's your brother? And who the fuck? I don't fucking care. What, we went to the Mediterranean once together, you know, like, it's like, oh, is this important to Rollo? No, nope. I feel, like I said, after we see that battle for, hopefully, for the last battle for Kattegat, the last battle for the trading port, that we can see, you know, maybe the battle for a continent, a few countries, you know, real kingdoms, maybe that'll matter. Hey, I still love this series, but I'm not gonna lie, every single episode that airs, I start to like it less and less, so that's definitely a concern. I'm not gonna lie and say I like something that didn't. I'm definitely not gonna ignore fundamental flaws within the story structure. I think that the series was once great, it could be great again, and we only have one more full season before it's all said and done. Let's just hope they make the simple adjustment of just establishing a clear path for our main characters, having the characters' actions not constantly be in conflict with their goals and desires, and simply establishing a endgame for our characters that we can literally just root for or root against. Whoever you may be, whatever you may think, you can get behind it or not get behind it. And that is simply a very dumbed down and very simple version of what storytelling is, and hopefully it will clean itself up. But again, sorry about the video, and I can only make so many cuts, and fair use is seemingly whatever YouTube deems it to be, or the studios deems it to be this day. So it is an ongoing, very, very frustrating battle, but you can only spend so many hours in the editing room without just simply saying it's just gotta go out. So thank you guys so much. Again, make sure to subscribe. We do cover Vikings on a regular basis, and if you're feeling generous, make sure to check out the Patreon. Hopefully a few dollars out of your pocket a month would be unnoticeable for you, but would make a huge difference for me. Thank you to all my existing Patreons. It's a great community, and I can't thank you guys guys enough, okay? So enjoy your weekend, enjoy your holiday, and we will see you guys soon.